Shalom, Bethel family. It's Thursday, and so time once again to recap our Torah discussion from last week. Last week we read Parshat Mishpatim, a parsha full of a lot of legal material, legal code, and it was also Shekalim, the Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh Adar, where we read the section about collecting money by doing a census. Everyone had to bring a half a shekel. So I was thinking about the Parsha, and I was reminded of a interview I heard a few weeks ago with Michael Lewis. Now, you may remember Michael Lewis. He's the author of a lot of famous books you've heard of, like Moneyball and The Blind Side and The Big Short, Liar's Poker, and who knows how many more, most of which that I mentioned became great movies, but a lot of great books before they were great movies. And he's got a new book out called The Undoing Project. Now, I have to admit that I have not yet had the opportunity to read The Undoing Project, although it's high on my list. I've read a number of reviews and heard a couple of interviews, and it sounds great. In some ways, though, I feel like I don't even have to read it. I know this story very well. It's one I've been fascinated by for a long time. It's the story of two Israeli researchers, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, who literally changed the way we think about everything. They created an entirely new field known as behavioral economics, based on an idea that turned the orthodoxy of economics up until they published on its head. See, old economics is based on this age-old idea that people will make rational decisions based on costs and benefits. This Israeli duo proved that in fact, people are irrational. It hardly seems a point worth proving. Anyone who's ever interacted with another human being knows that we are not always the most rational creatures. But all of economics up until this point was based on the idea that we were. Kahneman and Tversky showed that we're not rational. We make bad decisions all the time. But, they said, people can be predictably irrational. So if we know how people are going to react, even if it's irrational, we can still manipulate factors to get them to make the best choices. I'll give you an example. There's an experiment that someone did in a nursing home. See, apparently compliance with people taking their medicine, even life-saving medicine, is not all that high, down to 20-25%. What they did at this hospital was they put everybody's medicine in a box. They were told if they opened their box at the time it is to take their medicine, they would be entered into a lottery with a chance to win $1,000, and there'd be a drawing every month. And you know what? For the chance of being entered into that lottery and winning $1,000, compliance in that nursing home went from some 20% to over 90%. Right? That is wildly irrational, right? The medicine these folks were taking was life-saving, right? That's not enough to motivate them to take it. But the off chance that they might win a lottery, that's going to do it. That's behavioral economics. It's understanding that irrational motivations can sometimes be even more powerful, a lot more powerful than rational ones, even when it comes down to saving lives, right? That's irrational. And that's behavioral economics. I've been fascinated by this field for a long time because it seems to me that Judaism figured this out a long time ago. I am sure that we won't read this in Michael Lewis's book, and I'm not even sure that Kahneman and Tversky were religious. But it is no accident that Jews trailblazed this field in Israel. After all, our whole religion is based on the idea that we won't necessarily do what is best for us just because, and so instead develops practices and rules in our relationship with God that guide us to behave in beneficial ways despite ourselves. Take, for example, this special Shabbat of Shekalim. Right, the Torah portion we read from, Ki Tisa, commands us to count the people by collecting a half a shekel coin from everyone. Is that really the best way to count people, though? I don't think so. But by doing an annual census in this way, the Torah develops a system whereby everyone contributes. We are not only counted, but are also counted on as part of the community. And being a contributing member of the community makes one's life more meaningful. Making sure everyone is contributing, that everyone is a contributing member, compounds that effect. It makes living together more meaningful and better for everyone. Right? So by what seems to be counting the people in this horribly irrational way, what we've really done is we've created a whole system whereby community happens and everyone is equalized. Right? Rationally, that should happen anyway. But the Torah doesn't say any of that, any about the meaningful people and the contributing people. Instead, it says, do this to get an accurate count, and if you don't, you'll be struck by a plague. Rashi, the medieval commentator, explains this by saying that anything that is counted directly might get struck by pestilence. So if you count people, they'll get sick and a plague will break out among you. By the way, a superstition that we continue to this day, when we're looking for 10 members in a minyan, we're not supposed to count 1, 2, 3. We count not 1, not 2, not 3, or we take a 10-word pasuk, a passage from the Bible, and we count them that way, Hoshea, Et, Amecha, etc., etc. So this stands tall. But of course, it's nonsense. It's irrational, but it's effective. And that's not just behavioral economics. That's behavioral Judaism. So much of Jewish practice follows this pattern. We are told to say thank you to God before we eat. Is it because God needs our blessings? God needs our thanks? Of course not. I'm pretty sure God could care less. But because stopping to express gratitude before we eat or do anything else changes our perspective, it's worth doing. If we just told people, be more grateful, they probably wouldn't do it. But tell them God wants your blessing, and we sure do. We are told to celebrate holidays and Shabbat. Not because these moments of time are empirically any different from other moments, but because carving out time to enjoy what is sacred in the world and each other's company makes life more meaningful and fulfilling. And we can do this with almost every mitzvah, from tikkun olam to prayer, from teaching our children to supporting Israel. The point is to look at the legalistic sections of the Torah, like the ones in Parshat Mishpatim that we read on Saturday, and see only ancient laws that may be irrelevant, is to miss the understanding of Torah completely. Right? These laws are a way to represent values and bring those values into our lives through these behaviors. That's what Torah is all about. That's what Judaism is all about. The Jewish practices rarely highlight their rational result of making our lives better, more meaningful, and more full of beauty, because that's not likely to motivate us to do it. Or at least, it wasn't in ancient times. We, on the other hand, we modern people, we have Hanuman and Tversky. And we can identify the phenomenon and understand how much can be added to our lives by doing these practices, by doing the things that are taught to us by our Torah and by our rabbis. The question is, how rational are we? Will we take advantage of this great gift that has been given to us, the gift of behavioral by Judaism, by adding more mitzvot into our lives? By stopping to recognize Shabbat in some new additional way, by changing our dietary habits, maybe take one aspect of kashrut on, you give up pork or not to eat milk or meat together, whatever it might be. Every single one of these actions has that potential to elevate every part of our life. We don't need to be fooled into that. We understand the phenomenon. The question is, will we be rational? Will we do it? I hope that we're all able to say yes to that answer as we make our lives more fulfilling by embracing Judaism together. by embracing this way of life and by all becoming not just Jews, but behavioral Jews. With that, I wish you a wonderful week ahead and a Shabbat Shalom for this coming Shabbat, Shabbat Terumah.